On the 25th of January 1971, General Idi Amin Dada of the Ugandan army staged a partially bloodless military coup d'etat that overthrew the government of Milton Obote and declared himself president of the East African country. Idi Amin went on to establish a reign of terror on his people and oversaw his country's fall from grace to grass. His atrocities earned him the title, the Butcher of Uganda. But who is Idi Amin Dada, and how did this despotic military general rise to power in the East African country? In this edition on Hisple Media, we revisit the story of the brutal 8-year reign of Idi Amin Dada, the Butcher of Uganda. And finally, we will answer the question, was Idi Amin Dada the bloodiest tyrant Uganda ever witnessed? Please come with me. The journey began on May 17, 1925, when Idi Amin Dada was born near Koboko in the northwestern Nile province of what is now the Republic of Uganda. His father, a Kakwa tribesman, and his mother, a Lubara, separated shortly after Idi Amin was born. Thereafter, the newborn Idi Amin was brought up by his mother, a herbalist and diviner. He was a member of the Kakwa ethnic group, a small Islamic tribe that has settled in the region. In 1946, after receiving only basic education, Idi Amin joined the British Colonial African Army known as the King's African Rifles, the KAR, and quickly rose through the rank. He was deployed to Somalia in 1949 to fight the Shifta rebels and later fought with the British during the suppression of the Mau Mau rebellion in Kenya. He is believed to have also served in Burma, Somalia, and Uganda during the Second World War. Although Idi Amin was considered a very skilled soldier, he developed a reputation for cruelty and was almost dismissed from the service on several occasions for the excessive brutality during interrogation. Nevertheless, he rose through the ranks, reaching Sergeant Major before finally being made an FND, the highest rank that was possible for a black African serving in the British King's African Rifles in 1959. During this time in the army, Amin became the light heavyweight boxing champion of Uganda, a title he held for 9 years between 1951 and 1960. But before we get to his brutal reign of terror on the people of Uganda, let us examine the initial misconceptions about Idi Amin Dada. By the way, if you are new to Hisple Media or have not subscribed yet, consider subscribing, like and share this video. Thank you. At first, Idi Amin was considered by many to be a sociable and charismatic leader, and he was often portrayed by the international press as a popular figure. In 1975, he was elected chairperson of the Organization of African Unity, the OAU, amid resistance from Julius Nyerere, President of Tanzania, Kenneth Kaunda, President of Zambia, and Seretse Khama, President of Botswana, who boycotted the election meeting. A United Nations condemnation was blocked by African head of states as well. But how did Idi Amin Dada manage to commandeer a government under the tight grip of Milton Obote? Well, after more than 70 years under British rule, Uganda gained its independence on October 9, 1962, and Apollo Milton Obote, who was the leader of the Ugandan People's Congress, the UPC, became the nation's chief minister and later prime minister. Milton Obote appointed Idi Amin, who was one of only 2 high-ranking Africans in the King's African Rifle, as first lieutenant of the Ugandan army. Shortly afterwards, Idi Amin was sent to the north to quell cattle stealing, but he perpetrated so much atrocities that the British government demanded for his prosecution. Instead, Obote arranged for him to receive further military training in the United Kingdom. On his return to Uganda in 1964, Amin was promoted to major and given the task of dealing with an army in mutiny. His alliance with Milton Obote continued to flourish through the 1964 and 1965 as Idi Amin helped to expand the size and power of the Ugandan army. His success led to a further promotion to the rank of colonel. In 1965, Obote and Idi Amin were implicated in a deal of gold, coffee and ivory smuggling out of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. A parliamentary investigation demanded by President Edward Mutebi Musesa II put Obote on the defensive. In a show of force, however, Milton Obote arrested 5 cabinet ministers, promoted Idi Amin to general and made him chief of staff, suspended the 1962 constitution and declared himself president. Musesa was forced into exile in 1966 after government forces under the command of Idi Amin stormed the royal palace. A few years later, Milton Obote began to question the loyalty of Idi Amin after 2 failed but unidentified assassination attempts on him. Behind the scenes, however, Idi Amin began to strengthen his position within the army, using the funds obtained from smuggling and from supplying arms to rebels in southern Sudan. He also developed ties with British and Israeli agents in the country. In a swift response, however, President Milton Obote put Idi Amin under house arrest. But this approach failed to yield any positive result. Thereafter, Amin was sidelined to a non-executive position in the army. However, owing to this sense of disloyalty, Obote ordered his arrest while en route to Singapore for a Commonwealth Head of Government Conference in 1971. But Idi Amin would take full advantage of his absence. On January 25, 1971, while Obote was attending a meeting in Singapore, Amin led a coup d'etat, taking control of the country and declaring himself president. Obote was thereafter forced into exile in Tanzania. General Idi Amin subsequently declared his title to be His Excellency President for Life, Field Marshal Alhaji Dr. Idi Amin, VC, DSO, MC, Lord of all the beasts of the earth and fishes of the sea, and conqueror of the British Empire in Africa in general and Uganda in particular. The emergence of Idi Amin was initially welcomed both within Uganda and by the international community. Political prisoners, many of whom were Idi Amin supporters, were released and the Ugandan secret police was disbanded. At the same time, however, Idi Amin established his own killer squad to hunt down supporters of Milton Obote, but we will get to that in a moment. In 1972, while on exile in Tanzania, Milton Obote attempted unsuccessfully to regain the country through a military coup d'etat. His supporters within the army, predominantly from the Akoli and Lango tribes, were also involved in the coup. Amin responded by bombing Tanzanian towns and purging the army of Akoli and Lango officers. But he did not stop there. Ethnic violence grew to include the whole of the army and then to Ugandan civilians as Idi Amin became increasingly paranoid. The Nile Mansions Hotel in Kampala became infamous as Idi Amin's interrogation and torture center, and he moved residences regularly to avoid assassination attempts. His killer squad, under the official titles of State Research Bureau, the SRB, and the Public Safety Unit, the PSU, were responsible for tens of thousands of abductions and murders. Idi Amin went on to personally order the execution of the Anglican Bishop of Uganda, the Chancellor of Makerere College, the Governor of the Bank of Uganda, and several of his own parliamentary ministers. In addition, Idi Amin went on to wage an economic war that brought his country from grace to grass. In 1972, Idi Amin declared economic war on the Asian population in Uganda. This group had dominated Uganda's trade and manufacturing sectors as well as a significant portion of the civil service. About 70,000 Asian holders of British passports were given 3 months to leave the country, and their abandoned businesses were handed over to Idi Amin supporters. He severed diplomatic ties with Britain and nationalized about 85 British-owned businesses in Uganda. Israeli military advisors were also expelled from the country, and Idi Amin turned instead to Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi of Libya and the Soviet Union for support. Unfortunately, these actions resulted in the collapse of the economy as manufacturing, agriculture, and commerce came to a crashing halt. on January 27, 1976, when the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine (PFLP) hijacked an Air France flight, Idi Amin welcomed the terrorists and supplied them with troops and weapons. He was, however, humiliated when Israeli commandos subsequently rescued the hostages in a surprise raid on the Entebbe airport. In the aftermath of this rescue operation, Idi Amin ordered the execution of several airport staff, hundreds of Kenyans that were believed to have conspired with Israel, and an elderly British hostage who had previously been escorted to a nearby hospital. Throughout his oppressive rule, Idi Amin was estimated to have been responsible for the death of roughly 300,000 civilians. But how did he finally lose control of the country? By the way, remember you can support our work on this channel by becoming our channel member in exchange for exclusive perks. You can equally buy us a super thanks by clicking the thanks button under this video. Thank you. Over time, the number of Idi Amin's intimate allies began to dwindle, and a section of troops who were initially loyal to him began to mutiny. In October 1978, with the assistance of Libyan troops, Idi Amin attempted to annex Kagera, a northern province of Tanzania which shares border with Uganda. Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere responded by mobilizing a counter-offensive to recapture the area, and drove the Ugandan army out with the help of Ugandan exiles. The battle raged into Uganda, and on April 11, 1979, Idi Amin was forced to flee when Kampala was captured. Although he originally sought refuge in Libya, he later moved to Saudi Arabia, where he lived comfortably until his death on August 16, 2003. The cause of death was reported as multiple organ failure. Although the Ugandan government announced that his body could be buried in Uganda, he was quickly buried in Saudi Arabia. Idi Amin was never tried for his gross abuse of human rights. Meanwhile, popular legends believe that Idi Amin was involved in blood rituals and cannibalism. But was Idi Amin Dada the worst dictator that Uganda ever witnessed? Well, despite Idi Amin's international reputation, he may not have been the bloodiest tyrant in the history of the country. In 1994, A.B.K. Kasozi reported in his account The Social Origins of Violence in Uganda 1964 to 1985 that the total number of politically motivated deaths during the reign of Idi Amin was as high as 300,000. These numbers were, however, dwarfed by those recorded during the two periods when Milton Obote ruled as president from 1962 to 1971 and from 1980 to 1985. Estimates of murders during the Obote years were not less than 500,000 and could be as high as 1 million. But Africa have witnessed other dictators as well. Click here for the story of the violent execution of Samuel Doe, one of the dictators of Liberia in 1990. For more interesting African history stories, consider subscribing to Hisple Media, like and share this video as well. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.